There is a moment after every lie when silence enters the room. A peculiar silence, not peace, but the absence of motion. It feels as if the air itself hesitates, unsure whether to continue breathing. In that pause, something ancient stirs, the faint vibration of truth, unwanted, waiting to be heard. But almost immediately, we turn away. We fill the gap with laughter, excuses, noise, anything to drown the pulse that reminds us we have seen what we were not supposed to see. The truth, when it appears, does not come as revelation but as ruin. It dismantles the architecture of comfort with an almost surgical precision. One glance into its eyes and the world we built, all our stories, our ambitions, our justifications begins to decay. It is no wonder we fear it, for truth does not flatter, it amputates. It removes the narcotic veil that makes existence tolerable. Most people do not hate lies because they are false. They hate truth because it hurts. Lies soothe. They create continuity between one breath and the next. They allow us to wake up each morning without collapsing under the weight of what life really is, a repetition of hunger, vanity, and distraction. The truth does not comfort the hungry. It tells them that desire itself is the disease. Civilization depends on this refusal to see. Entire nations, religions, and ideologies are elaborate machines designed to protect humanity from direct contact with the real. Every sermon, every advertisement, every political speech whispers the same anesthetic promise. Do not look too closely. Even art, which should reveal, is often used to decorate the cage. The most praised creations are not those that awaken, but those that make the prison walls shimmer. We claim to value honesty, yet we punish it wherever it threatens the collective dream. The truth teller is never celebrated in his own time. He is mocked, exiled, crucified, because he disturbs the necessary illusion that keeps the crowd moving. Without illusion, the market collapses, the temple empties, the marriage trembles, the mirror cracks. Every human institution is a shrine to our terror of clarity. People say they want authenticity, but what they really mean is, lie to me beautifully. They want just enough truth to feel virtuous, but not enough to change. They crave sincerity without consequence. And so, the world spins on a foundation of mutually agreed deception, a social contract of blindness. You pretend to believe what I say, and I pretend not to notice your doubt. Thus, the play continues, generation after generation. To speak truth, therefore, is not an act of wisdom, it is an act of violence. It shatters the collective hallucination from which humanity draws its stability. It is not the truth that destroys, but the loss of illusion. For most people, illusion is the only bridge between themselves and the unbearable fact of existence. Strip it away, and they fall not into enlightenment, but into madness. The tragedy of mankind is not that we are deceived, it is that we need to be. Our entire psychology, our biological wiring, our social conditioning, all converge toward a single instinct. Preserve the dream, no matter how false, for the truth is too bright for the human eye. We are like nocturnal creatures, adapted to shadow. The light blinds us, the darkness sustains us. But there are moments, brief and terrifying, when the veil slips, a death, a betrayal, the quiet realization that nothing we chase will ever fill the hollow. In such moments, truth flashes like lightning, illuminating everything for an instant before plunging us back into darkness. And though we rush to cover our eyes, some part of us remembers. The mark of truth remains like a scar, invisible but tender to the touch. That scar is the beginning of awareness. For to live without illusion, even momentarily, is to stand naked before existence, stripped of purpose, comfort, and meaning. Most cannot endure it, but for the few who do, something extraordinary happens. When every lie dissolves, what remains is not despair, but stillness. The silence after the lie is not empty, it is real. And in that reality, however harsh, there is the faint outline of freedom, not the freedom to escape suffering, but to see it without denial. This is where our descent begins. When the mind first glimpses truth, it does not awaken, it retreats. It recoils like flesh from fire. For truth is not light, but exposure. and the instinct of every living thing is to preserve itself from exposure. We are born not to see, but to survive, and survival demands illusion. It demands a filter thick enough to soften the unbearable sharpness of what is. Look closely at the human animal. From birth, it reaches outward toward warmth, toward comfort, toward the breast, toward sound and shape. It reaches not because it knows, but because it wants. This wanting, this restless movement of the will, is the first deception. It convinces the infant that what it grasps will bring peace. And yet, from cradle to coffin, that peace never arrives. Desire ends only to be reborn, like fire feeding on its own ashes. The will does not want satisfaction, it wants wanting itself. If we could truly see this, if we could watch our own motives without the narcotic haze of hope, most of us would not endure the sight. For beneath every ambition hides fear, the terror of stillness, of being left alone with the void that no achievement can fill. The mind's entire architecture, memory, language, belief is a defense against this void. We call it personality, we call it identity, but it is only the scaffolding built to protect us from collapse. Nature, cunning as ever, ensured that truth would be dangerous. To preserve life, it made self-deception a virtue. The animal does not contemplate futility. It hunts, breeds, and dies without question. But man cursed with intellect stands half inside instinct and half inside awareness. He sees enough to sense the absurdity of his existence, yet not enough to transcend it. The result is neurosis, a creature too conscious to be content and too ignorant to be free. So the mind bends reality into shapes it can tolerate. It invents meaning where there is none, purpose where there is only process. It tells itself that suffering builds character, that destiny awaits, that love redeems, that pain has purpose. These are not lies told by others. They are the reflexive dreams of the mind itself, the protective myths of consciousness. Without them, life would taste of dust. Consider the moment when someone confronts their own emptiness, when all the trophies, lovers, prayers, and distractions no longer work. They call it depression, crisis, burnout. But what it truly is truth without anesthesia. The illusion has worn off, and the raw mechanism of existence stands naked before them. Eat, sleep, desire, decay, repeat. The soul, unaccustomed to such nakedness, trembles. It begins to rationalize, to numb, to flee into anything work, entertainment, ideology, anything that will restore the old blindness. For this reason, most people do not seek enlightenment. They seek distraction disguised as meaning. Even philosophy, when approached with the wrong hunger, becomes another escape. They read not to see, but to soothe. They quote wisdom as a charm against the very thing it exposes. They turn even truth into decoration, words framed on walls they never dare to look behind. The tragedy is that the mind mistakes comfort for understanding. It believes that to feel better is to know more. But in reality, every deep truth wounds before it heals. To see clearly is to bleed quietly, inwardly, without applause. The mind, sensing this, clings to ignorance as if it were life itself. And in a way, it is. Observe the modern world. Every device, every screen, every sound is designed to protect us from silence, because silence is the breeding ground of truth. The constant hum of stimulation is not progress, it is armor. We have engineered an environment where no one must ever be alone with their thoughts long enough to see what they are. The modern man is not awake, he is distracted in high definition, but there are always cracks. In the quiet hours, when sleep resists, when the lights dim and the noise fades, the mind senses what it has hidden from itself. It feels the slow corrosion of meaning beneath all movement. It hears the faint whisper, "This is not leading anywhere." That whisper is the first tremor of lucidity and the beginning of panic. For the mind does not fear pain. It fears purposelessness. It can endure suffering if it believes it leads somewhere. But when the veil of meaning tears, when the narrative collapses and no hand reaches out from heaven, it faces the unthinkable. That existence is not a story, but a cycle. And the cycle does not care. That is when the mind recoils. It invents religion, ideology, romance, or revolution, anything to re-enchant the world it can no longer believe in, it rushes back into the warm arms of illusion because, in truth, illusion is love's last refuge. Yet somewhere inside, the faint memory of truth lingers like a wound that refuses to close, and the soul, even while fleeing, carries that scar as a silent reminder that beneath every comfort lies the abyss, waiting, patient, eternal, real. Civilization is not the triumph of truth, it is its burial beneath decoration. We call it progress, but it is only the perfection of distraction. From the first campfire to the last glowing screen, mankind has built monuments not to wisdom, but to forgetfulness. Every empire is a theater erected against despair. Every temple, a fortress against thought. Every marketplace, a carnival to drown the whisper that says, none of this will last. The lie of progress is the most elegant of all delusions. It seduces with movement. It tells us that history has a direction, that suffering is a price we pay for advancement, that the future will redeem the past. Yet, look closer, every century repeats the same hunger with new instruments. We invent machines to save time, then waste the saved time on new anxieties. We cure diseases, only to live long enough to die of boredom. We multiply knowledge, yet diminish wisdom. Humanity circles the same wound, calling each rotation a revolution. Technology does not liberate us from illusion, it industrializes it. The screen replaces the altar, but the ritual remains a daily liturgy of dopamine and despair. We scroll through endless images of simulated joy, each one whispering that everyone else has found meaning except us. The result is not enlightenment, but collective hypnosis. We are awake only to the degree that the machine allows us to dream in unison. And when the machine pauses, when the power fails, what remains? A silence so thick it terrifies. For beneath the humming networks and glittering lights lies the old question, why? Why endure? Why repeat? Why seek more when nothing satisfies? Civilization's true function is to ensure that no one ever stays still long enough to ask. The lie of identity is equally exquisite. The modern self is a costume stitched together from fragments of culture, opinions borrowed, desires implanted, values inherited without examination. We call this patchwork authenticity, but what we call being ourselves is merely obedience to invisible scripts written by others. We dress, speak, desire, and even suffer according to fashions of the soul. Individuality, in truth, is the most sophisticated form of conformity. Observe the parade. Influencers posing as prophets, consumers posing as rebels, politicians posing as saviors. Everyone performing sincerity, everyone terrified of silence. The self has become a stage name, a public hallucination. We are known not for who we are, but for how convincingly we impersonate an identity. This is not self-expression, it is self-erasure through exhibition. We have traded the depth of being for the spectacle of appearing. Then comes the lie of purpose, the grand narcotic. We are told that life must mean something, that each of us carries a destiny waiting to be fulfilled. But destiny is the consolation of those who cannot bear randomness. The universe, indifferent and vast, offers no script. The will hungers, and we clothe that hunger in poetry. We say we are called to greatness, to service, to love, but it is always the same call. The will demanding more existence, more striving, more fuel. We invent purpose so that we may continue suffering with pride. Religion, that ancient architect of comfort, gave this hunger divine vocabulary. It promised order where there was only chaos, salvation where there was only entropy. But even as faith decays, its mechanisms survive in secular forms. The new gods are productivity, wellness, fame, and progress. They offer the same promise: obey, strive, believe, and perhaps one day you will be whole, yet no one ever arrives. The temple has changed shape, but the incense of illusion still burns. The marketplace is now our cathedral. Advertisements replace sermons, and brands preach redemption through consumption. Buy, and you shall be seen. Own, and you shall belong. Upgrade, and you shall transcend. The gospel of material comfort masks metaphysical poverty. We no longer pray for heaven, we pre-order it. And still, after every acquisition, the same hollowness returns the quiet proof that the hunger was never external. Art, too, has joined the conspiracy. Once art dared to reveal, now it decorates despair. Museums are filled with works that flatter the intellect but avoid the wound. Artists perform rebellion under the sponsorship of the system they claim to critique. Beauty becomes anesthetic rather than revelation. We applaud the courage of imitation and call it innovation. True art, the kind that strips illusion bare, is dismissed as pessimism, because nothing is more offensive to a comfortable world than honesty. Culture, then, is a machine of concealment. It does not evolve toward truth, but away from it. Every generation refines the instruments of denial. Louder music, brighter screens, faster communication, shallower thought. We have mistaken stimulation for meaning, novelty for growth. Our cities glow like neurons, in a brain dreaming itself awake. Yet, underneath that luminescence lies exhaustion, the soul's quiet implosion beneath the weight of noise. And so we worship movement. We call it ambition, progress, innovation. But movement is not growth. It is evasion. We rush forward not because the future is calling, but because the present is unbearable. We run faster every year, chasing the mirage of purpose, terrified that if we stop, we will hear the silence, the sound of the truth we have buried under our own applause. Modernity, in its genius, has achieved what religion and empire could not: the mass production of forgetfulness. We are no longer deceived by others. We deceive ourselves automatically. We have automated illusion, outsourced despair, digitized denial. The result is a civilization that cannot feel except through simulation, a humanity that fears nothing more than awareness. And yet, every now and then, the machinery falters. A war, a heartbreak, a death, a moment of stillness between two notifications. And in that pause, the old terror returns the feeling that all this is scaffolding built above an abyss. For a heartbeat, the illusion flickers, and truth seeps through like light beneath a door. Most will shut it quickly, rushing back to the comfort of distraction. But a few will linger. They will stare into that crack, trembling yet awake, and whisper the forbidden realization. We built all of this so we wouldn't have to know ourselves. That whisper marks the beginning of philosophy, not as theory, but as exile. No empire is older than the one we build within the empire of denial. It has no flag, no anthem, yet it governs every heartbeat. Its architecture is invisible: habits of thought, reflexes of hope, and tiny gestures of avoidance, so subtle they masquerade as reason. We like to think deceit requires intention, but self-deception is effortless. It is the gravity of consciousness always pulling us back toward comfort. The mind begins its deceit the moment it learns to name pain. By giving suffering a label, it creates the illusion of control. Stress, heartbreak, loss, injustice, words that convert the abyss into categories, as though to name a wound were to heal it. Language itself is the first sedative. We use it not to reveal reality, but to domesticate it, to file its edges until it fits the furniture of thought. The truth is not linguistic, it is pre-verbal, raw, unmediated, animal. To speak of it already softens it. Then comes the great narcotic: hope. Hope is not a virtue. It is anesthesia, administered by the mind to itself, the sweet poison that makes the unbearable tolerable. We tell ourselves that tomorrow will redeem today, that suffering refines the soul, that patience will be rewarded. But the will laughs beneath it all, hungry as ever, devouring every promise it creates. Hope prolongs the fever, it delays awakening, it whispers, endure a little longer, and by the time one sees the deception, a lifetime has passed. Pleasure is another mask. We chase it not for joy, but for relief from the silence that follows awareness. Every indulgence, from the banal to the sacred, is a distraction from the recognition that pleasure is self-canceling. The moment it arrives, it dissolves, leaving behind the same hunger it momentarily silenced. The will feeds on satisfaction, like a parasite feeding on its host, never killing, always draining. And yet, we return, convinced this time the taste will last. But perhaps the most refined machinery of self-deception is meaning itself. We invent narratives to make our suffering noble. The artist calls it inspiration, the politician calls it duty, the lover calls it destiny. Each converts pain into purpose, so that it may continue without collapse. Yet behind the poetry remains the same blind compulsion to continue. Even tragedy, when aestheticized, becomes a form of consolation. We admire our ruin, as if beauty could ransom us from it. Modern spirituality has turned this machinery into a luxury brand. It sells denial wrapped in incense and affirmation. It teaches people not how to think, but how to bypass thinking, to manifest, to vibrate higher, to align with abundance. The language of light conceals the same old fear, the fear of looking directly at suffering. Positive thinking is merely the secular continuation of prayer words recited not to reach the divine, but to drown the silence where the divine never answered. The modern mystic smiles, but the smile trembles. Deep down, they know that the universe does not negotiate. Even the pursuit of self-knowledge can be corrupted by this machinery. We study ourselves as tourists, study ruins fascinated, but never willing to live there. We analyze, interpret, intellectualize, until the raw terror of being conscious becomes a tidy theory. Psychology replaces confession. Diagnosis replaces insight. We no longer confront the abyss. We label it, medicate it, schedule follow-ups. The sickness of the soul becomes a line item in a healthcare plan. The machinery applauds itself for its compassion. Every defense mechanism, repression, projection, rationalization is a valve in this great engine. We lie to ourselves so well that we call the lie balance. We dull the edges of reality until life feels safe enough to repeat. But deep within, the will never sleeps. It murmurs beneath the lullabies, whispering through dreams, hinting in fatigue. It cannot be reasoned with because it is older than reason. It does not care for our illusions. It only uses them to sustain its endless movement. There are, however, moments when the machinery jams, when grief rips through the careful stories we tell, when betrayal shatters the illusion of control, when aging dismantles the fantasy of invincibility. In those moments, the machinery grinds, sparks, and smoke fills the mind. The human being glimpses itself without disguise. What it sees is not sin or failure, but futility, and for an instant, everything is quiet. Most will rush to repair the engine. They will pray, drink, work, fall in love, anything to restart hum. The silence is unbearable. It feels like dying because it is the dying of illusion. Yet some will linger in that stillness. They will not move. They will allow the machinery to rust. These few begin to taste a different kind of awareness. Not the frantic awareness of purpose, but the cold, steady awareness of what is. To such souls, truth no longer feels like cruelty. It feels like clarity, harsh, colorless, yet strangely merciful. For when the machinery of self-deception collapses, one discovers that beneath it there was nothing to lose. The will still moves, but the mind no longer mistakes its hunger for hope. There is no longer an argument between what is and what should be. There is only the quiet rhythm of being stripped, simple, real. And so the machinery continues for the many, as it must. But in the ruins of that machinery, for the few who have seen through it, something else flickers. Not joy, not despair, but understanding. The kind that does not speak, does not preach, does not seek. The kind that simply sees. There are moments when the machinery falters. Not through philosophy, not through meditation, but through something far more violent loss. Life, indifferent to our delusions, rips away what we use to hide from it. And for a fleeting instant, the curtain falls. The air grows thin. The mind stops spinning its stories. And what stands before us is not a moral lesson or cosmic revelation. It is the raw pulse of existence itself, indifferent, vast, and unspeakably still. The first great fracture comes with death. When someone we love disappears, we are forced to confront the terrifying asymmetry of being. That consciousness, once extinguished, leaves behind no trace except memory, and memory decays. We dress grief in ceremony, flowers, and prayers. But beneath all ritual lies panic, the recognition that the same annihilation awaits us. The funeral is not for the dead, it is a defense against seeing. We talk of heaven, of reunion, of legacy, because to face oblivion naked would undo the mind. Yet for one brief moment, in the silence after the ceremony, when the crowd disperses and the body is gone, something breaks. We feel the truth not as idea, but as presence. Life does not belong to us. It moves through us and leaves as it pleases. There are also smaller deaths, failures, betrayals, endings where the lie of permanence collapses. When a dream dissolves after years of striving, the soul stands in an empty room it once called destiny. The applause is gone, the mirror cracks, and all that remains is the dull hum of futility. Success, once achieved, often delivers this same realization more cruelly than failure. For when one finally possesses what one has chased, the hunger remains, unchanged. The mind, deprived of excuses, must face the horror that it was never the object that was missing, it was peace. In such moments, we sometimes glimpse the truth that Schopenhauer called the essence of the world blind, restless will, manifesting as endless desire. To see it clearly is to stand outside the drama for a breath, to see the puppeteer and the puppet as one. The tragedy is that most turn away quickly, for lucidity feels like suffocation to those who still crave comfort. We call it meaninglessness, but it is not the absence of meaning, it is the absence of illusion. The second crack appears in solitude. Not the curated solitude of retreats, or retreats disguised as vacations, but the real kind when no one is watching, and the usual distractions lose flavor. It is then that the self, deprived of audience, begins to dissolve. The roles we play in the theater of identity, worker, lover, believer, rebel, all fade into silence. The mind fumbles for noise, for any echo of affirmation, but none comes. What remains is an unadorned awareness, raw and unmediated. Most mistake it for loneliness, but loneliness requires a someone to miss. In true solitude, even that someone disappears. There is only presence, vast, indifferent, unnameable. Sometimes this glimpse arrives not through loss, but through beauty, a melody, a sunset, the slow motion of dust in a shaft of light, moments so fragile that they annihilate the self that observes them. For a breath, there is no desire, no ambition, no will, only the seeing, only the being. It does not last, it cannot, but in that instant, suffering is suspended. Schopenhauer called this the aesthetic state, the rare interval when consciousness stops serving the will and becomes pure mirror. We call it art, but art is only the trace of such suspension, a fossil of a moment when the self vanished. Then there is pain, the most honest teacher. When agony overwhelms reason, illusion cannot stand. No slogan, no philosophy, no God survives the scream of nerves. Pain reduces the world to its essence, sensation. In that state, all pretense burns away. The self, so proud of its narratives, becomes nothing more than trembling flesh. It is humiliating, yet strangely purifying. For when we emerge, if we do, we see what the healthy forget, that existence is not owed to us. It continues not because it is good, but because it cannot do otherwise. And finally, there is silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of noise within. It does not come often, and when it does, it feels almost supernatural. The will, exhausted, loosens its grip, and the mind hangs for a second between craving and boredom. Time stops moving. The world, stripped of significance, becomes transparent. A leaf moves, a breath enters, light flickers across a wall, and for once, nothing needs to happen. The veil has lifted, the lie has broken. Such moments do not grant salvation. They offer no reward, no meaning, no promise. They simply reveal what was always true, that reality, in its essence, is indifferent yet complete. That nothing needs to be added or forgiven, that suffering and serenity are not opposites, but twins born of the same silence. Most will not remember these moments clearly. The mind, terrified, rushes to reassemble its defenses, to translate the experience into acceptable language. Epiphany, peace, God, but words only rebuild the wall. The real experience cannot be spoken, only endured. Those who have seen it know. After the lie breaks, there is no going back. You may pretend again, You may play your role, but part of you will always live in that exposed stillness, the place where truth stands naked and unmoved. It is not enlightenment, it is not despair, it is simply the real glimpsed between breaths, before the machinery restarts, before the noise returns. At the deepest level of awareness, the mask of the world falls away, and what remains is neither good nor evil, it simply is. Here, the philosopher ceases to theorize, and the soul ceases to plead. What stands revealed is the essence that Schopenhauer called the will, a blind, aimless striving that underlies every movement, every birth, every thought. It is not your will, nor mine, but the cosmic compulsion to persist, to desire, to repeat. It does not know why it moves, it only knows that it cannot stop. Everything that lives is an instrument of this will. Every heartbeat, every ambition, every tragedy is its echo. The mother who gives life and the murderer who takes it are both expressions of the same current. The saint prays to escape suffering. The lover clings to another body for warmth. The emperor builds monuments to eternity, all of them obeying the same master. Beneath all motives lies one command: be. And because to be is to want is to suffer. To see this clearly is not madness. It is sobriety. The mind, stripped of its consolations, realizes that existence is not a story unfolding toward redemption, but a loop of hunger feeding on itself. The will devours its own offspring. It births desire, fulfills it for a breath, and then replaces it with a new lack. Happiness, in this cycle, is merely the pause between two pains. The moment satisfaction appears, it begins to decay, and the will demands again. Thus, even pleasure is suffering in disguise. This recognition is not pessimism, it is description. It is the cold eye that watches the world without the anesthesia of meaning. And yet, in this stark lucidity, something miraculous occurs: detachment. Once we see that the will cannot be appeased, we stop trying to bargain with it. We no longer demand that life be just, that love be permanent, that ambition deliver peace. The burden of expectation dissolves. The same world that once tormented us with its cruelty now reveals its innocence. It is not cruel, it is blind. From this detachment arises a strange tenderness. When one ceases to demand that life justify itself, compassion becomes natural. We recognize in every creature the same futile striving that beats in our own chest. The insect clawing toward light, the addict reaching for escape, the child dreaming of greatness, all are mirrors of the same will, suffering under different names. To see this is to lose the appetite for judgment. The wise do not forgive because they are moral, they forgive because they understand. There is, however, one faint escape, not through conquest, not through pleasure, but through negation. The rare soul who turns against the will, who refuses to participate in its endless chase, begins to taste a peace that is not of this world. It is not the peace of fulfillment, but of exhaustion, the stillness of the flame that no longer clings to its fuel. This is what the mystics called renunciation, what the Buddhists called nirvana, what Schopenhauer called the denial of the will. It is not death, but the quiet withdrawal of desire from its own theater. Yet this negation cannot be forced. It arrives when the will, having exhausted all disguises, grows tired of itself. After countless cycles of craving and despair, it begins to dissolve naturally, like a fever breaking. The eyes no longer look outward for meaning, they rest. The hands no longer grasp, they open. The mind no longer demands, it observes. The self, once frantic to become something, begins to disappear into being. And so, paradoxically, the acceptance of futility becomes freedom. When one ceases to fight against the nature of existence, existence ceases to wound. Pain remains, but without protest, it loses its poison. Suffering becomes transparent, like rain falling on an already wet stone. The world continues its endless motion, but the soul no longer identifies with its rhythm. It sees the dance, but does not join it. Truth, in the end, is not a treasure to be found, but a weight to be carried. It does not make life easier, it makes it real. It strips away the narcotic of hope and leaves in its place a clear, windless silence, a silence so vast that even despair dissolves within it. To live in this silence is not to escape the world, but to see it without distortion. One eats, one speaks, one loves, but no longer under the illusion that any of it can rescue us from what we are. And what are we? Transient forms through which the will dreams of permanence, ripples on an indifferent sea, sparks that mistake themselves for fire. But even in this bleakness, there is the beauty of understanding. For when illusion dies, what remains is the raw magnificence of reality itself, fragile, transient, self-devouring, yet radiant in its honesty. The same sun that burns the desert also gilds the dying leaf. The same ocean that drowns also reflects the sky. Nothing changes, only the gaze that sees it. And so, the wise do not seek happiness, they seek clarity. They no longer beg the world to comfort them. They learn to look at it without trembling. They do not ask, why must I suffer? They ask, how could I have ever believed I would not? To see without consolation, that is the final form of courage. It is the stillness after all prayers have failed, the dignity of no longer needing lies. In that stillness, the self fades, the will quiets, and the truth stands cold, vast, and free. This is not salvation, it is something rarer. It is the end of fear,